A 4-year-old orphan is forcibly baptized by a mean priest who says the devil is in him. But a millionaire saw everything and did something that surprised everyone. Comment giving a rating from 0 to 10 for my story. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The morning sun had barely peeked over the horizon when the 4-year-old orphan opened his eyes in the dark corner of the alley where he'd slept. His skinny limbs trembled with cold, and the hunger he'd felt for 3 days made every movement a silent battle against weakness. With unsteady steps, he headed towards the dumpsters near the downtown market, hoping to find some leftover bread or fruit that might ease the painful emptiness in his little stomach. The small town was slowly waking up, and the first shopkeepers were beginning to open their doors when the community's priest, a 60-year-old man with piercing eyes and constantly trembling hands, spotted the child rummaging through the trash. His face twisted into an expression of revulsion and something deeper, more disturbing. He'd been watching that kid for weeks, and with each passing day his conviction grew. There was something deeply wrong with that child. "Damn him," he muttered under his breath, making the sign of the cross with shaky fingers. "The signs are all there. The hollow eyes, the way dogs run from him, how plants wither where he walks." Across the town square, a woman watched the scene with growing unease. The 30-year-old millionaire had arrived in town just 3 days earlier, staying at the only decent motel in the place to personally oversee the construction of a new factory that represented the biggest investment of her business career. Her fortune, amassed through savvy investments on Wall Street and in cryptocurrency, allowed her to choose her projects carefully, but this factory was special. It represented her definitive entry into the manufacturing sector, a step that would multiply her wealth exponentially. Dressed in expensive clothes that contrasted sharply with the local simplicity, she watched the boy with a mixture of compassion and concern. There was something in the child's desperate posture that touched her deeply, vaguely reminding her of her own lonely childhood in expensive boarding schools where money was plentiful, but human warmth was scarce. The priest approached the child with determined steps, his sandals slapping on the uneven flagstone of the square. The boy, frightened, tried to back away, but the older man was faster, grabbing him by the thin arm with a force that made the child cry out in pain. "The time has come," the clergyman said in a hoarse voice, ignoring the boy's desperate sobs. "I can no longer allow this abomination to roam freely through our streets. The devil needs to be cast out before it's too late." Some townspeople gathered around the scene, but no one dared to interfere. The priest enjoyed absolute respect in the community, and his words were accepted as unquestionable truth. The millionaire, however, felt something different stir in her chest, an indignation that grew with each passing second. The clergyman dragged the crying boy towards the church, and the crowd followed them in morbid silence. The millionaire hesitated for a moment, her rational mind reminding her of pending business, of contracts that needed to be signed, of the tight construction schedule that couldn't be delayed. But something stronger than reason compelled her to follow the group. Inside the old church, the priest forced the boy to kneel before the altar. The child trembled violently, not only from fear, but from a primal terror that seemed to emanate from every cell in his small body. His tears streamed down without stopping, and his breathing was punctuated by desperate sobs. "In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit," the priest began, raising a vessel of holy water, "I cast out every demonic force that dwells in this child." The icy water hit the boy's face violently, making him scream. The sound echoed through the old walls of the church, a cry of pure despair that seemed to pierce the souls of all present. The millionaire could no longer stand still. "Stop it!" she shouted, running towards the altar. "He's just a child." The priest turned around, surprised by the interruption, his eyes gleaming with a mixture of fury and fanatical religious fervor. "Don't meddle in what you don't understand, woman. This child carries a curse that could destroy our entire community." "What curse?" "He's just hungry and scared." The millionaire knelt beside the boy, who cowered against her like a wounded animal seeking protection. "See for yourself," the priest said, pointing a trembling finger at the child. "Since he appeared in our town, the crops have begun to rot, 3 people have fallen seriously ill, and even the cats run away when he approaches. These are not coincidences." The millionaire picked the boy up in her arms, feeling how he trembled against her chest. His eyes, large and frightened, stared at her with a mixture of hope and terror that broke her heart. At that moment, all her business plans, all her financial commitments, seemed secondary to the urgent need to protect that helpless child. "I will take care of him," she said in a firm voice, even knowing that she had no idea how to fulfill that promise. The priest laughed, a dry and unpleasant sound that echoed through the church. "You don't know what you're doing. This child has no family, no papers, nothing. He's a problem that the local authorities prefer to ignore. And when the curse he carries starts to affect you too, don't say you weren't warned." The millionaire left the church carrying the boy, aware of the hostile looks that followed them. Her mind was already working frantically, calculating the practical challenges that awaited her. How to care for a traumatized child, how to deal with the hostility of the community, and more importantly, how to reconcile this unexpected responsibility with the professional commitments that could determine her financial future. Back at the motel, she settled the boy in her suite, but soon realized that the trauma of the forced baptism had left deep scars. The child refused to take a bath, panicked whenever he heard footsteps approaching, and woke up screaming in the middle of the night. It was as if all the terror accumulated in his few years of life had concentrated in that terrible moment in the church. The first night was the hardest. The boy wouldn't stop crying, and nothing the millionaire tried could console him. She walked around the room for hours, rocking the child and whispering soft words, but the fear seemed to have settled permanently in his little heart. When she finally managed to get the boy to sleep, the millionaire sat in the armchair next to the bed and reflected on the enormity of what she had taken on. Her life, so carefully planned and controlled, had been turned upside down in a matter of hours, and something told her that the real challenges were yet to come. The next morning, the millionaire woke up to the sound of muffled sobs coming from the bathroom. The boy had locked himself inside and refused to come out, no matter how much she tried to convince him. Through the door, she could hear the child's desperate whispers, incomprehensible words mixed with crying. "Please, honey, open the door," she said softly, resting her forehead against the cold wood. "No one will hurt you here." But the silence that followed was even more disturbing than the sobs. The millionaire realized she needed professional help, someone who understood traumatized children. After a few calls, she got the contact of a 60-year-old woman known in the area for her extraordinary patience with difficult children. The caregiver arrived in the late afternoon, a small woman with gentle eyes and hands calloused from work. Her name was irrelevant. What mattered was the way she moved slowly and spoke in low tones, as if she instinctively understood that sudden movements could trigger new episodes of panic in the boy. "I've seen a lot of children like this," she told the millionaire as they watched the boy huddled in the corner of the room, refusing to eat. "The trauma sets in deep, like the roots of weeds. It takes time to pull everything out." During the following days, the caregiver worked with infinite patience. She left food near the child without forcing him to eat, sat at a respectful distance, and hummed soft songs. Gradually, the boy began to accept her presence, although he still panicked whenever anyone tried to touch him. Meanwhile, the millionaire discovered that her interference at the church had generated unexpected consequences. During a meeting with the contractor responsible for the construction of the factory, he informed her, with obvious embarrassment, that the land chosen for the project officially belonged to the local parish. "It's always been a verbal agreement with the previous priest," the man explained, avoiding her gaze. "But now he's demanding formal documentation and, well, It seems there are some complications. The millionaire felt her stomach clench. Her company had invested millions in the project, and the contracts with suppliers were already signed. A significant delay in the construction could result in devastating losses, not only for her, but for all the investors who trusted her business vision. "What kind of complications?" she asked, although she already suspected the answer. The contractor hesitated before answering. "He said he won't negotiate as long as you keep the child under your care. He thinks he'll bring bad luck to any venture in the town." That night, as she watched the boy finally sleep without screaming, the millionaire mentally calculated her options. Her net worth was largely committed to the factory project. If she were forced to cancel the project, she would lose not only the investments already made, but also her reputation in the financial market. Years of carefully building her fortune could crumble in a matter of weeks. But when she looked at the peaceful face of the sleeping child, something in her chest rebelled against the idea of abandoning him. That boy had lost everything, and now she was the only thing standing between him and a world that saw him as a curse. The pressure increased when she received an urgent call from her partners back in the city. The tense voice of the chief financial officer echoed over the motel phone. "The investors are nervous," he said bluntly. "There are already rumors that you are having personal problems that could affect the project. You need to resolve this situation quickly, or they will withdraw their support." "How much time do I have?" she asked, feeling the weight of financial responsibility on her shoulders. "A week, maybe 2. After that, we'll have to consider other options." Other options meant her dismissal and the appointment of another executive to lead the project. It meant losing not only the investment, but also control over years of planning and hard work. During the following days, the situation in the town deteriorated even further. The priest had intensified his smear campaign, spreading increasingly fantastic stories about the curse that the boy carried. He told the faithful that the millionaire was a tool of evil, sent to corrupt the community. The hostility manifested itself in subtle but constant ways. In the motel restaurant, the waiters took longer to serve her, and the conversation ceased when she entered the room. On the street, people looked away and whispered malicious comments when she passed by with the boy. One morning, the caregiver arrived visibly disturbed. "They're saying that anyone who helps you will also be cursed," she revealed in a low voice. "My own sister asked me to stop coming here." The millionaire felt a wave of guilt. Not only was she risking her financial future, but she was also harming innocent people who were trying to help. The pressure intensified when she learned that the parents of other children were forbidding their kids from playing in the areas where the boy might appear. "Maybe it's better to take him to the city," suggested the caregiver hesitantly. "There, he can receive proper professional help, and you can start over away from these prejudices." But the millionaire knew it wasn't that simple. In the city, she wouldn't have time to properly care for the child. Her business responsibilities required constant travel, meetings that stretched for hours, decisions that couldn't wait. The boy needed stability, someone present, a real home. The situation reached a critical point when she tried to take the boy for a walk in the town square. A crowd quickly formed around them, and the whispers turned into open and hostile comments. "Why doesn't she take that child away from here?" a woman said loudly. "Since they arrived, my husband can't work properly in the bakery," added another. "The dough doesn't rise like it used to." The boy, feeling the tension in the air, began to tremble and clung desperately to the millionaire's skirt. His large eyes filled with terror, and she could see that he was starting to panic. "Let's go," she whispered, picking him up in her arms. But before they could move away, the priest appeared in the square, his presence immediately intensifying the charged atmosphere. He pointed a trembling finger in their direction. "Look," he shouted to the crowd, "look how the child trembles with guilt. The devil himself recognizes the house of God and despairs." The boy began to cry. a loud and desperate sound that seemed to confirm the clergyman's words for the superstitious townspeople. The millionaire felt the hostility of the crowd intensify like a wave of heat that suffocated her. At that moment, as she carried the crying child back to the motel, she had a disturbing revelation. It didn't matter how much she spent on caregivers, therapists, or moving to another town. As long as that boy carried the scars of trauma, he would continue to be seen as different, as a threat, and she, by protecting him, would always be seen as an accomplice to something sinister. The question that tormented her that night, as she listened to the boy's muffled sobs in the next room, was simple but devastating. Was it possible to save a child and her own life at the same time? And if she were forced to choose, what choice could a decent person make? The decision came unexpectedly during a violent thunderstorm that swept through the town in the early morning. The boy had woken up screaming again, but this time something was different. Amidst the lightning flashes that illuminated the motel room, the millionaire noticed that he wasn't looking at her with terror, but pointing desperately at the window. Outside, in the motel's inner courtyard, a small cat was trapped under a fallen roof tile, meowing in pain as the torrential rain soaked it. The boy, momentarily forgetting his own fear, ran to the door and pulled it hard, trying to go out to help the animal. "No, honey, it's dangerous out there," said the millionaire, but something in the child's determination made her hesitate. The boy looked at her with those big eyes, and for the first time since the trauma at the church, spoke a clear word: "Kitty." At that moment, seeing the genuine compassion shining on the child's face, the millionaire understood something fundamental. The boy wasn't cursed. He was just a wounded child trying to find his place in the world. And maybe, just maybe, her mission in life was more important than any factory or financial investment. Together, they went down to the courtyard and rescued the injured cat. The boy held the animal with infinite care, whispering sweet words while the millionaire improvised a bandage with towels from the motel. It was at that moment that she made the decision that would change everything. The next morning, she called her chief financial officer in the city. "I want to sell everything," she said bluntly. "All the properties, all the liquid investments, all the stocks." "Have you lost your mind?" was the stunned response. "Your net worth is over 20 million. You can't just throw it all away because of a kid." "I'm not throwing it away. I'm investing in the future." Her voice was firm, more determined than it had been in years. "I want to build a special school for traumatized children right here in this town." The silence on the other end of the line lasted long seconds. "That's financial suicide. You'll lose everything and have no guarantee of success." "Maybe, but for the first time in my life, I'll go to sleep knowing that my money is being used for something that really matters." The caregiver, when she heard about the decision, was initially worried. "Are you sure you know what you're doing? A school like that will need much more resources than just money. It will need specialized professionals, approval from the authorities, and most importantly, acceptance from the community." "Then we'll conquer all that, one step at a time," replied the millionaire, feeling a renewed energy running through her veins. The first step was to seek out the only lawyer in town, a middle-aged man who was initially reluctant to get involved in what he considered a lost battle against the priest. But when she explained her plan in detail and showed the financial resources available, he agreed to help. "It's going to be complicated," he warned. "We need permits from City Hall, approval from the town council, and most importantly, we have to find professionals willing to work here. Most of the child trauma specialists are concentrated in the big cities." Meanwhile, the boy showed signs of gradual improvement. The episode with the cat had been a turning point. He began to speak more, even in whispers, and came to accept the millionaire's gentle touch without panicking. The caregiver observed these changes with growing hope. "He just needed to find a purpose," she commented one afternoon as they watched the boy care for the injured cat, which was now recovering well. Traumatized children often heal when they find something or someone to protect. But the external challenges were far from over. When the news of the school spread through the town, the reaction was immediate and hostile. The priest organized a meeting at the church to discuss what he called a threat to our Christian community. "She wants to turn our peaceful town into a center for troubled children," he declared to an audience of concerned residents. "Imagine how many other special children will come here. Our town will become a magnet for all the problems of the region." The opposition manifested itself in increasingly aggressive ways. Shopkeepers refused to sell materials for the renovation of the building chosen for the school. City Hall employees created non-existent bureaucratic obstacles. Even some of the workers hired for the construction abandoned the project after social pressure. The millionaire's financial situation began to deteriorate rapidly. The costs of the school were much higher than she had initially calculated, especially with all the resistance faced. Her fortune, built over years of careful investments, was being consumed at an alarming rate. "You can't keep doing this," warned the lawyer during a particularly difficult meeting. "You've already spent almost half of your resources, and we haven't even gotten final approval to operate. If things continue at this rate, you'll run out of money before you even open the doors." But the millionaire had found something she never knew she lacked: a purpose greater than personal wealth. Every night, when she saw the boy sleep peacefully next to the cat they saved together, she knew she was on the right track. The turning point came when a young psychologist from the city read about the project in a regional newspaper. Specialized in child trauma, she had spent years looking for an opportunity to work outside the big urban centers, where she could really make a difference in the lives of children. "I may not have much money to invest," she said during a call to the millionaire, "but I have specialized knowledge and a network of professional contacts that can help us." This first alliance was followed by others. A retired teacher who had worked with special needs children offered to help with the curriculum. A nurse who had lost her job in the city decided to move to the town and work at the school. Slowly, the resistance began to diminish. It didn't disappear completely, but some people in the community began to question whether they were being fair to a woman who was sacrificing everything to help children in need. The decisive moment came when the boy, now more confident and communicative, decided to do something no one expected. During a market day in the town square, he approached an elderly woman who had tripped and fallen, spilling her groceries across the floor. Without hesitation, he began to help pick up the products, his small voice whispering words of comfort to the frightened woman. The scene was witnessed by dozens of people, including some of the millionaire's most fervent critics. "Look at him," said one of the shopkeepers, surprised. "He doesn't look like a cursed child. He just looks like a kind boy." But just as hope was beginning to blossom, the news that the millionaire most feared arrived. The bank had rejected her last loan application, and the remaining resources were not enough to complete the project. She had bet everything on a dream and now faced the real possibility of complete bankruptcy. That night, as she calculated and recalculated the numbers in her head, she realized that she had reached the end of her financial options. The money would run out in 2 weeks, and there were still months of work left before the school was ready. Her fortune, her future, everything had been sacrificed for a child, and a dream that might be too big to become a reality. Salvation came from where it was least expected. In the last week before the money ran out completely, when the millionaire had already mentally accepted defeat, the caregiver arrived at the motel with a mysterious expression on her face and a yellowed envelope in her hands. "I need to tell you something about the boy's parents," she said, sitting heavily in the armchair in the room. "Something I found out talking to older people in town." The millionaire stopped rocking the boy, who had just fallen asleep after another nightmare, and looked at the woman with growing curiosity. "His parents weren't just simple people like I said before," continued the caregiver, her voice low so as not to wake the child. The father worked as an accountant for several companies in the area, including some very prosperous ones, and the mother, she had a small inheritance from her family that was never claimed. The millionaire felt a spark of hope, but tried not to get carried away by unrealistic expectations. What kind of inheritance? A bank account that was forgotten after the accident. It's not a fortune, but... The caregiver hesitated, looking at the sleeping boy. It may be enough to finish at least the first phase of the school. The process to access the resources was complicated and time-consuming. The lawyer needed to prove the millionaire's temporary guardianship of the boy, demonstrate that the funds would be used for his benefit, and convince a judge in the city that the school project would really help the child in his recovery. While they waited for the court decision, something unexpected happened in the town. The priest, who had been the main opponent of the project, began to face growing questions from his own congregation. Many faithful had witnessed the episode in the town square, when the boy helped the elderly woman, and some began to question whether they were judging the child unfairly. The change of opinion accelerated when a local family, whose son had drowned in the river 2 years earlier, approached the millionaire with an unexpected proposal. "We want to donate the land next to the school," said the father, a 30-year-old man with eyes still marked by the loss. "Our house became too big after we lost our boy, and we thought it would be good to see other children playing there again." The generosity of that family deeply touched the community. Other people began to offer to help, some donating building materials, others offering volunteer services. It was as if the town was awakening from a collective nightmare and rediscovering its capacity for compassion. The most emotional moment came when the court approval finally came out. The resources of the boy's parents, added to the donations from the community and what remained of the millionaire's fortune, were enough to complete the basic project of the school. But the real turning point happened 3 days before the planned opening. The millionaire received an international call that would change everything once again. "My name is representative of the International Foundation for Children's Rights," said the voice on the other end of the line. "We read about your project in a report that came to us through the psychologist who works with you. We are impressed with the personal sacrifice and dedication demonstrated." The millionaire almost dropped the phone. "How did you find out about our work?" "The doctor who joined the project has international connections. She documented the entire recovery process of the boy and the impact that the school is having on the community. This caught our attention because it represents exactly the type of initiative that our foundation seeks to support." The proposal that followed was beyond all the millionaire's dreams. The foundation not only offered full funding to expand the school, but also wanted to replicate the model in other small towns around the world. "You have created something unique," explained the representative, "an approach that combines individual healing with community transformation. We want to support not only this school, but an entire network of similar institutions." Meanwhile, the boy continued his impressive recovery. The trauma of the forced baptism still left scars, but he had learned to trust again. More importantly, he had found his own voice and purpose helping other injured animals that appeared in the town. "He has a natural gift for caring for vulnerable creatures," observed the psychologist during one of her sessions. "It's as if his own experience of trauma had made him more sensitive to the needs of others." The priest, isolated by the change of opinion in the community and facing questions from his superiors about his extreme methods, was finally transferred to another parish. His departure was marked by respectful silence, but not by regret. The town was ready for more compassionate spiritual leadership. The new priest, a young man with training in pastoral psychology, made a point of visiting the school before the inauguration. "I want our church to be part of the healing of this community, not the division," he told the millionaire. The day of the inauguration arrived with a bright sun and a surprisingly large crowd. People from neighboring towns had come to see the project that was gaining regional recognition. Journalists documented every moment, transforming the local story into something much bigger. But the most touching moment was when it was time for the boy to cut the inauguration ribbon. Wearing new clothes and with his pet cat in his arms, he approached the entrance of the school with confident steps. His eyes, once full of terror, now shone with curiosity and hope. "Can I speak?" he asked softly to the millionaire who was holding his free hand. It was the first time he had expressed a desire to address a group of people. The millionaire nodded, too moved to speak. In a clear voice, the boy addressed the crowd. "This school is for children like me, who sometimes get scared. But here we learn that we don't have to be afraid because there's always someone who takes care of us." The simple phrase, said with the pure honesty of a child, brought tears to the eyes of many present. The millionaire realized that this moment represented more than the inauguration of a school. It was the birth of a new form of community, based on compassion instead of prejudice. In the months that followed, the school received its first children, orphans from the region, children with diverse traumas, some simply from families who needed additional support. The boy who had been the first became a kind of informal mentor to the new students, teaching them that it was possible to overcome fear and find joy again. The millionaire, now living more simply but infinitely richer in purpose, became the official director of the school. Her personal fortune had transformed into something much more valuable, the certainty that her life made a real difference in the world. One afternoon, as she watched the children playing in the schoolyard, including her boy, who ran free and happy with other classmates, she reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them there. She had lost millions in money, but she had gained a family and a purpose that no material wealth could buy. The project had become an international model, with delegations from various countries visiting to learn about the methodology developed. But for the millionaire, the real success was in the smiles of the children and the certainty that, at least in that small corner of the world, love had conquered fear. The boy ran up to her, interrupting her thoughts. "Mom," he said, the first time he had used that word, "can I take care of the new kitty they found today?" "Of course, honey," she replied, hugging him with infinite tenderness. "You're very good at taking care of others." And in that embrace, under the golden sun of the late afternoon, both knew they had found exactly what they were looking for: a home, a family, and proof that true love can transform even the most difficult stories into happy endings.